Good morning again. Here I am, day 2 of my 30-day Go Live on Facebook weekday challenge. Today, I'd like to start with a quote by Jack Canfield. He said, "Everything you want is on the other side of fear." I'm going to continue talking about some things that I've done that I think were brave actions, but that other people might think were crazy or just plain stupid. So you decide and you can let me know. Here's what happened. I was in a very stressful, stress-filled job. Now, some people think that they're the same thing. Now, the stressful part of the job was that I was in an industry that was making life safety rope for firefighters, for mountain climbers, for technical climbing, for water rescues. So it was really critical that these ropes were made exactly according to our specifications, because otherwise people's lives literally were hanging in the balance. And so the stress of knowing that my role as a supervisor was to make sure that all of the workers were following the rules and the regulations and the practices 100% exactly the way they needed to be followed. There was always the chance of different yarn types being mixed up and just a lot of intricate facets, and more were being introduced all of the time. We had a great engineering staff that was just really coming up with innovative products, but it made it very difficult to make sure that things were kept separate and that people, the workforce, knew what was going on. And then it was stress-filled because the managing team was difficult to work with. There was a lot of drama. There was a lot of miscommunication. I know that's typical in many workforces, but when you combine the two, I was losing, hey, Ileana, how are you? I was losing a lot of sleep. I was starting to lose who I was as a person. I was definitely more cranky and irritable. And I started being the type of person, the type of manager I didn't want to be. I always have believed that you should respect the people in your workplace hierarchy that are higher than you. And you should always show that respect and never badmouth them to the lower echelons. This is part of my military training. It was part of my upbringing. And I found myself being critical vocally about the management team to some of the workforce. And that's so not who I am, because I really believe that it's important to present that strong front. However, as I said, I was losing myself. And so last summer, I made the decision to leave the company. But I wanted to do it in a good way because there were so many people there that I loved and I respected, and I wanted there to be an easy transition. So I offered them to reduce my work hours from 40 hours a week to 30 hours a week. Never expected them to accept that. Never expected that. So my grand plan to be the hero in the story was to give 2-week notice and then offer to stay for an extended period of time working those 30 hours to get the transition taken care of. Well, when they said yes, my heart kind of fell because I didn't want to stay longer than my end date. Actually, in my mind, was the end of October 2017. And as the time progressed through the rest of the summer and into early fall, I knew that I didn't want to stay there. But the company had agreed to my terms. How can you just walk away from that? I flipped the calendar to October, and the first thing I thought was, yeah, I don't want to have to turn the page again. I don't want to be here for November. I should have stuck with my original plan and left at the end of October. But at this point, it was a little bit too late to meet that timeline. I had a week's vacation coming up in there, and again, I did want to support a transition. So it was early October. I went to my manager and I said, I just can't do it anymore. And so I gave my notice to be done November 3rd of 2017. Now, you have to understand, I didn't have another job lined up. I had, because of past planning and good money management, I had enough money in my emergency fund in my savings account for about 5 or 6 months worth of living expenses. And so I made the decision just to leave, nothing lined up. I knew in my mind that I would give myself a couple of months. I wanted to see if I could get a side hustle going, a side business. I have a hard time with that word, side business. It's my issue. I'm still working on it. But come November 3rd, I left this job and I gave myself 3 months to just decompress, kind of recover from the stress of that experience, to rediscover who I am and start looking at what I wanted for my next step. So some people would think that was crazy. Some people think it was stupid, leaving that secure, decent paying job for nothing. But the nothing was only the financial part. The quote I said at the beginning, I have to look over at my other screen to see it. Everything you want is on the other side of fear. I could have let fear of financial insecurity keep me in that job for another year, for another decade. But I was brave enough to say, this isn't working for me. I don't want to be the person I would be in another year if I stayed there. I certainly didn't want to be the person I would be in another decade if I stayed there. And yes, I could have said, okay, so I'll look for another job and I'll take whatever comes along just so I can be out of there. But that's not what I wanted. And everything I want is on the other side of fear. And I will tell you, these past 6 months, I have been having a blast. I have been learning so much about myself. And granted, the income isn't there, but I've started a part-time job that covers my monthly expenses for the most part. But life is good. And I wouldn't have this experience and this joyous feeling and this love of life again, this rediscovery of who I am. I'm even bigger and better and brighter and more loving life than I was if I hadn't done what I consider to be a very brave thing. Quitting a job, knowing that people would judge me for it and say that I was crazy, call me stupid, and say that I just wasn't thinking. Someone even said, oh, this is just your midlife crisis. Well, perhaps it is, but it's a glorious one. So that's the one brave thing, or one other brave thing that I've done in my life that provided a huge transition for me, a huge life-changing, because it allowed me to become me again. So today I encourage you to think about a time when you felt like you were losing yourself, when you felt like you were not the same person that you'd always been or the person you wanted to be. And you took an action, you did something brave to change that. And I would love to hear your story in the comments. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you tomorrow. Have an amazing day.